The conclusions we arrive at through the intellect and the responses and desires we entertain in our imagination can only program our vehicle of action with garbage unless their programs are based on the blueprint for correct living or divine law, which is housed in the fourth sphere, Ma'at. By correct living and divine law, we just don't mean what people mean by morality. We must realize that the divine law is a reflection of our divine self. If you desired to become a soldier, you would have to undergo a training program. The program would be a reflection of what a soldier should be. In the same way, the program of what we should be, in reality, who we are, is the subject of the divine law as framed in Ma'at. It leads us to behave in a manner that will awaken our spiritual power, Sphere 3, wisdom, Sphere 2, and divine identity, Sphere 1, Ausar. The above also shows us that the part of our being in charge of programming the animating part of the being is the will. These are principles that have eluded even the best clinical psychologists. While they have correctly identified the fact that our behavior is dictated by subconscious activity, they have failed to realize that the subconscious is programmed by a set of conscious behavior factors. These are the functions that we have classified on the tree from 0 to 9. The animal division of the 10th sphere corresponds to the subconscious, especially the id of Western psychology. According to the preceding, the Ausar man is a person who has fully awakened the faculties symbolized by the spheres 1, 2, and 3, and 0 above the tree, by the proper use of the will, 6th sphere, to guide the intellect, spheres 7, 8, 9, to program the animating vehicle, sphere 10, according to the program contained in the Ma'at faculty, sphere 4. In addition, when called upon to perform in materialistic endeavors, government, economics, science, etc., given his or her insight into man's nature, he or she will always seek to gain a Ma'at cosmological understanding of the subject to provide the proper guidance to the intellectual faculties. A fundamental law of cosmologic is that all 11 categories of reality must have an input into a situation or event in order to understand it. Given this exceptional insight and view into the true function of our faculties, of all 3 types of men, the Ausar is the only one that is qualified for establishing and guiding the behavioral and social regulating institutions of the world. In fact, Ausar men were the original inventors of these institutions. The Ab man, the chief faculties of the Ab man. The Ab man is an individual in whom the faculties of the 10th to 7th spheres are fully developed, and those of the 6th to the 4th are either merely awakened or fully developed. The dormancy of the higher spheres distinguishes them from the Ausar men. The influences from the 4th to the 6th spheres determine their character. The influence from the 4th sphere, Ma'at. The Ma'at faculty enables us to see the inner factors that unify things based on the mutual relationships and interdependence of things with each other and the whole, which it expresses through the abstract or metaphoric use of images. It perceives the structural components underlying things and events, thus enabling us to see the whole. It is the mode of thinking we call synthesis. It enables us to transfer what we learn from one area of life to another. It is thus that truth and morality are determined. Take, for example, the question of tobacco and alcohol versus the so-called illicit drugs. In the USA, tobacco and alcohol kill more people yearly, are responsible for far more financial losses and destroyed lives than all illicit drugs combined, or of Americans who died in the entire Vietnam War. You can even throw in many other causes of death and misery and still not come close to the number in question. Now, when you examine all of these drugs on the abstract level, we find that they all represent the same type, if not amount, of damaging behavior. An ad man will condemn them all as illicit drugs. We can take a similar view on prayer versus hypnotherapy. They both have similar records in affecting physical and emotional healing and transformation, some of which you could refer to as miracles. An examination on the abstract level of these practices will show that in both, the operative is the acceptance of a belief as a truism in the state of trance. The emotional fervor of prayer induces trance, which enhances receptivity to suggestions. Up to a point, it matters little what you believe, as long as you believe and take your belief into trance. The power is in believing and not in what, up to a point, you believe in. If the advocates of the various religions understood this from the very beginning, believe me, there would have been several 100 million less murders in the name of God. Thus, we can see that the source of the glaring contradictions, seeming hypocrisies, and immoralities in the world is due to the placement in high places of individuals in whom this faculty is dormant. The influence from the fifth sphere, Herukuti. When the Herukuti faculty is awakened, we are able to understand the underlying factors separating things and events from each other. This is analysis. The fact that men, for example, have a faster alcohol metabolism than women, which allows them to drink more before suffering health problems. That women remember better than men and outpace them as age increases. That women have a better sense of smell while men are more sensitive to light, and so on, shows that there are substantial inner differences between men and women. To set up a society in which there are no allowances for gender differences, to call every act of gender differentiation discrimination, betrays the dormancy of this faculty. The most important use of the analytical faculty is in its application to the discovery that there are two different sets of qualities that we mistakenly lump together as our identity. We must learn to understand that the part of our being that is able to transcend conditionings and limitations is separate from the part that is crystallized in them. There are the self and the person, respectively. The faculty of the fifth sphere also provides us with a fiery zeal, an all-consuming intensity of purpose that enables us to cut ourselves from the identification with our persons. The realization of the separation of our identity from the lower part of being, the person, is necessary for the administration of justice, as the greatest obstruction to it comes from the executor's concern over their personal interests, which is the fundamental cause of the miscarriages of justice. The influence from the Heru faculty. The development of the Heru faculty, the will, enables us to resist being guided by the animal, emotions and desires, part of being, the midbrain, brainstem or R complex, and the Kyabid, as well as the lower intellectual faculties. The imagination, sphere 7, syllogistic, logical, or rational thinking, and memory thought drifts, 9th sphere. Its freedom from the animal impulses as well as the enlightenment from God makes it the focal point of our efforts towards self-discipline and self-mastery. As it cannot be compelled by God or demon, it becomes the battleground for the way we will choose to live our lives. It is thus that this faculty became the source of the word hero and the proverbial hero of the major myths and romances all over the world. Originally, the hero of the myths, quote unquote, were personifications of man's will. The evil they fought against represented usurpation of power by the lower faculties of spheres 7 through 10. The good they fought to restore represented the reinstatement of God as the leader of man's life. What a shame is it to see what Western man has done with this literary formula. The great message here is that the individual cannot transcend the lower influences of his being unless he or she adopts a heroic posture in the efforts of self-realization. Are you in the habit of confronting your negative habits like a gung-ho Marine? If not, then you now know why those habits are still hanging in there. You see, all those slices of and greater than life award-winning stories have not done a damn thing to really make your life any better. Best to stick with the myths. In the Kemetic Holy Scriptures, myth to Western man, Heru, is the character, faculty that confronts Set, the archetype of evil, and defeats him with the help of Tehuti, the god of wisdom. If you are acquainted with the mental faculties that correspond to these gods, quote unquote, then you will always remember that the way to defeat evil in your life is to mount a militant offensive with the wise counsel received from God through sages or oracles, or your wisdom faculty. Given the circumspective ability of this faculty to take into account the input from all other spheres and zero above the tree in its rendering of a decision to choose a way, the fully developed ab-man is the best suited for carrying out the governmental, judiciary, and legislative functions in society.